Hey there, everybody, and thanks for tuning into this video. So I haven't done one of these videos in a very long time, but this is basically my series on the mystic path to soul illumination. And so my topic today is the rainbow bridge within, from fear to freedom through consciousness. And so we're going to be talking about, everybody knows that, people that know me know that I really love anything that has to do with ancient wisdom or philosophy or anything in that realm. I get super excited about it. It's what I nerd out about. But we're just going to chat about this because this has been something I've been in a study with for, well, many years. But then you start to put little bit pieces together. And so that's one of the most powerful things is through your study and through your practice, you're going to start putting other pieces together and it's just going to start blossoming. And this is how you nourish yourself in your life and become more self-aware, not only physically, emotionally, but also spiritually. So let's kind of jump into it because I get really excited about these topics and I think that you'll enjoy it as well. So, all right, so let's just kind of dive into this. Again, this is my PowerPoint here. You can check out my website. I've got a lot of information on my website. I've got links to my books, interviews I've had. There's a link to the Spirit Heart Cruise that's happening in January of this year. There's links to the Speaker's Inner Circle and to Ethereal TV. You'll be able to find out a whole bunch of stuff about me and book a session. So, but that's not why I'm here. I'm actually here to talk about this topic. So, and of course, now that I'm wanting it to work, the PowerPoint is not working, but here we go. We're going to jump within to talk and start with the rainbow bridge. So I know everybody's heard this topic before, or this subject, or this title. You know, a lot of times when a pet, like a dog or a cat, passes away, we say they've crossed over into the rainbow bridge. So we started associating the rainbow bridge as something that brings us into the heavenly realms, you know, or associated it with death. But a lot of times we take some of these legends and these myths and we turn them into something that they're not. And I'm suggesting that this is not what it is at all. I mean, it has some hints or themes of what it originally was. But what if the bridge was never outside of us? What if it was always within us? And this rainbow bridge is about part of our spiritual journey, so to speak, here in this physical realm. So what if it was misunderstood? What if it wasn't a place? What if there wasn't an actual rainbow bridge that we think physically, because we think of it in a three-dimensional world? What if it was something that wasn't about when we cross after death? What if it was a path of awakening? What if this is a part of our actual path? This is what I'm kind of suggesting here. And so when we look at this in the Nordic ideas or the Nordic principles, they refer to the rainbow bridge as Bifrost. And so it's connection between Midgard and Asgard, or the humanly realm to the realm of the gods. So when you start to look at that, it starts to go, makes you really start to think. And in the Gnostic versions of the Gospels of John, it starts talking about, he starts referring to the human body is the bridge between the flesh or the matter into the spiritual realm. I think that's interesting. So, John talks about the human body is the bridge between the earthly, human matter, three-dimensional, whatever you want to refer to it, and the spiritual realm. Also, Charles Fillmore used to refer to, when he talked about enlightenment, when somebody achieved enlightenment, they felt an electrical charge go through their body. A lot of Buddhist monks referred to this. And he said that to crucify, as what happened to Jesus, is to amplify ourselves 1,000-fold. I thought that was very powerful. But so Midgard, or the Rainbow Bridge, is guarded by Heimdall. That's how you pronounce it, Heimdall. And is made of fire, air, and water. I find that super interesting. So the earthly realms has a bridge that bridges us for air, fire, and water. And then the fifth element is what? Ether, which is the spiritual realms. Now, I know people are going to break it down and all, and they get very literal. I'm talking about the feeling of the matter of how we feel this energy. And this is how we really have to start looking at this kind. So what ends up happening is a lot of these spiritual books, if you look at it intellectually, yeah, there's literal sense, but then you have to look at the energy or the spiritual. That's when the cosmic book opens up to you, when you feel it through your heart space. So when we start to go look at this as a path between worlds, So esoterically, this means a whole lot when we think about it on a spiritual realm. It's a bridge between worlds, the physical world and the spiritual world. Just makes you start to really stop and think. So every tradition has some form of a bridge. They might call it something else, but they've got Bifrost, we got Jacob's Ladder, we got the Genesis Rainbow, we got the chakras, the Gnostic Ascent. So when you really start to look at this, you're like, why it's the different symbols. As a friend of mine used to say, there's many paths up the mountain, Jared, but there's only one look down. And it starts to make you stop, pause, and go, why is it that there was this interesting information that's really similar in different cultures around the world? Today I spoke at a Unity Church in Dunedin, and somebody came up to me and they said, my whole thing was about choices and understanding who you are on a deeper level. And so when I started, they came up to me and they had literally had a book that was about choices and changing your choices. They're saying, it's just, I find it very interesting that you speak about this. And we were going to hand out this book to other people in the congregation. And I said, that's because there's a pool of consciousness that we're all connected to. And we call it synchronicity. But it's really because there is remember, the physical world is the bridge between the physical. The human body is the bridge between the physical and the spiritual, but we're all interconnected. In Christianity, we call that the Holy Spirit. So as we're pointing our fingers out at everybody and judging them for what they're doing or how they're handling their life or their interpretation is incorrect and mine's the only way, the reality is we're all dipping for the same pool of consciousness. So as you start to look at this and look at the bridge connects human to the divine, ego to the soul, fear to freedom, separation to unity, and personality to higher self. And so there's really no separation. The bridge was always there. We've just turned our back on it. And that's what sin actually means, is missing the mark. It means you're out of balance. But we've created this whole thing like sin has got all this kind of stuff. And it's really not what it meant in the first place. It means that we've turned the back on the bridge that it was already there. It was never went anywhere. It was never absent from our life. It was always there. The connection was always there. But we've also been taught that we can only get to spirit, to God, through a human being. And we can get it through a human being. The human being happens to be you, not a priest, not some sage, not some mystic. It's you. The answer's within you. You're your own savior. Everything is within you. And this really upsets people because they no. What do you mean? No. You're twisting the way the Bible looks or the spiritual text looks. No, I'm not. And so this is where we have to start looking at things and really start understanding, because when you start going into the Gnostic stories, because I want to touch on this a little bit. Sophia. There's Sophia and Elohim. They started to create their own children. They started to create other children besides themselves. And remember, it says in Genesis, we're going to make them in our image. Now we think that's the physical body that's made in our image. It's not. It's the spiritual body, the divine spark within all of us. But there's in this body, this physical, I smack it. Literally, there's not a divine spark physically in here. It's in the spiritual part of me. My soul is the divine spark. And so that divine spark has chosen to live in a physical existence, a spiritual being having a human experience. And so humanity contains this divine spark. So it has humanity has a soul. So forgetfulness creates suffering, and awakening restores remembrance. Now, how do you get to awakening? Because you have to walk through. You can't avoid the suffering. You have to look deep within the suffering to find out, because it's like unburying. It's like when they go to excavate an archaeological site, they excavate it and they unbury all these treasures of the ancient world. So what you're doing is you're through your suffering and becoming self-aware of why it's happening, you get to what? Uncover the treasures of who you are. And so when you really start to go into this, gnosis means you're learning, or your gnosis means knowing. So gnosis isn't learning something new. It's remembering what was already there, what was already true. You already had it. It's already been there. Never went anywhere. and it's always been a part of you. So when we can kind of dig deeper, Sophia goes and creates her own child without Elohim. So it's considered to be called the error, not necessarily a sin, but error. And because we look at that and we start to go, Yolda both, or Yolda Baoth, or the demiurge, creates these 7 archons. And so when we look at these 7 archons, that's very similar to what? Chakras. And so this path to understanding is to what? To learn and look at your own limitations or your own blocks and open those up so that you can become aware. And how do you do that? You do that by living. And living in a sense where you become the observer of your own world. So let's kind of jump in a little further, because if we could break down each one of these archons into maybe a way of looking at it, if you got an archon of fear, so you look at that, and you have to ask yourself the question, where is fear ruling your life? Are you afraid of the future, of maybe being a failure? Are you afraid of something that's going on, of something that you have no control over? Is that ruling your life? And so it's really interesting because, like I mentioned, I think that we should look at this false evidence appearing real and say, what is it that is making me have this fear? So you can break this down and change the language from I can't, the story that's being built in your mind, because who told you that you can't? Is there anybody in your life that says you can't do that? Because it's not true. What if you changed it to, what if I can? Then you cancel out, you take out the power of fear that the fear has over you. So the next one is shame. When you look at that and you think of, we've all had some things in our life that we may regret it, or we might have some shame on there. And this is one of those things we want to heal. So if we're looking at this and saying, the shame story might say, I am not enough, but you've always been enough. You are a child of God. You were always enough. There's never been a part about you that was never enough. There's never a aspect of you that was not enough. And all those things that you're judging yourself and feeling shame about yourself, they helped you become who you are today. So when we start to compare ourselves, their journey matters more than myself. So we're looking at them and saying, oh, they're a doctor, or they're an attorney, or they have this, or they have that. They have more money than me. You know, they look different than me and all that other kind of stuff. I'm not going to say that we all have our own individual challenges. That's because to say that is incorrect. We all have our own individual challenges. And through those challenges, they are how we become who we are. I have a learning disability called dyslexia. And so I see the world differently. I've changed my whole model of how I look at this. It's not a disability, it's how I see the world. And it changes how, and I think it's a blessing in some ways, because then I can change my phrase, their journey matters more than mine, to my path is uniquely mine. My path is uniquely mine. And so all those things where somebody told me I was dumb, or I felt like I was stupid, or I wasn't good enough, or whatever, and because I'm comparing myself to my friends that had a higher IQ than me and all that other kind of stuff, my path is uniquely mine, and so is yours. And so when I do that, I release this, and this fear, or this archon of comparison, loses power over me. The next one is I need permission. So you're looking for approval from your parents, your church, your job, whatever, your government. You authorize yourself. So you can say, I authorize myself to be happy. I authorize myself to fulfill my dreams. I authorize myself to go out into the world and live authentically of who I am. No matter what anybody else says, I authorize myself to live my life to who I feel I am in the now of the moment. So the next one is limitation. So I can feel stuck, but I can change that to I am growing. So you're not stuck. You're literally just living in the moment, and you're growing into your full potential of who you always were in the first place. You were never lacking. You never missing anything. You're never without. Those are the limitations of the world telling you that you can't have that, telling you that you don't deserve, but you do. You're a child of God. And so when you start to go on and start to look at this, and here's one that we all have done. I've done it myself. You get into that. This is just who I am. I am just this person. I have this learning disability and I can't do these things. And then all these things, all these limitations and all these blocks come up. But I can say, when I said, I am only this personality, that's the story. But the awareness response is I am the awareness behind the personalities. In other words, I get to be the observer of who I am, even in the moments when my ego comes out, when my limitation comes out, when my arrogance comes out. I get to be the observer of that, because if I get to observe it, I get to learn from it and grow from it. Everybody with me on that? So this really just gives you an opportunity to start looking at it, and then I can start to break this down, because I wanted to be able to show this a little more. And I'm going to just kind of bring this up a little bit. Well, that doesn't really show you what I want to show you. So let's go back to this view. So basically, it just kind of breaks down these different in comparison to the chakras and the theme. So we had survival, emotion, power, love, truth, and wisdom. So we look at this and we go, the root chakra goes into the themes of safety and grounding and physical existence. The sacral, emotions, creativity, relationships, solar plexus, personal power, confidence and will. Heart chakra, love, compassion, and connection. Throat chakra, truth, expression, communication. Third eye chakra, insight, intuition, perception. And crown chakra, unity, transcendence, and divine connection. So why is this important to kind of understand? So when we start to look at some of these things, and bear with me 1 second. When we start to look at these from a certain things, I want you to really start thinking about this. The rainbow, when you really think about it, the colors, they become pure light. When they start to hit a certain frequency, they become pure light. So if you have a chakra system and you start to hit a certain frequency, when all those chakras are open, your electromagnetic field gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So when you're in that love or awareness and you're really empowered yourself, the energies of the chakras get bigger and bigger. And as they start to join, instead of being separated, then you just start to show being light. As of Jesus told us, be the light of the world. So when you start to look at, when the archons, when you look at them, they're a blessing, because they allow you to look within yourself. And once you stop letting those aspects of fear and limitation and whatever it is rule you, stop letting them rule you, and you empower yourself within those, then the energies of your energy system gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it starts to release and allow you to grow into the beautiful being that you already were in the first place. So in a sense, now there's a whole other topic where people deem the archons as evil, but the reality is they are here created, in a sense, to limit yourself, because the demiurge, as Yaldabaoth, was created by Sophia, and he declared himself as the god of the material world. And there shall be no other gods before thee. But the reality is, if Elohim and Sophia are creating all their children, and those are all have divine sparks within them, and they're all made in God's image, in their image, then these children that are now forgotten who they are, and then the archons are there to basically convincing them that they're not, and feeding off of their fear, so to speak. When they lose their power, then those children stand up into who they are in the first place. They peel back the veil, so to speak, and then they become who they are, and they peel back the layers of the veil through frequency. So when they no longer feel the sense of separation, which the chakras can be separated until you stand into that empowered state, then you really get to understand it. How do you do that? You do that through self-awareness. You do that through looking within. You do that through looking at all these aspects that we've been talking about. So going on, and I'm going to switch my view here really quick again. We've already talked about this, but the four elements of earth, water, air, and fire, what am I missing? Ether. And so we've already chatted about this, but the ether is really the fifth element, the one looking through your eyes. So the ether is the soul looking through your eyes, your soul, your higher aspect looking through your eyes, experiencing the world through your physical self. Remember, the bridge, the rainbow bridge, is the bridge between what? The physical realm, the human realm, and the realm of the gods, spirit. So it really just makes you start to look. So the crossing of the rainbow bridge is you don't cross it after death. You cross it when fear becomes awareness, when judgment becomes understanding, when separation becomes unity, when knowledge becomes wisdom. And you really start to look at it differently because it's not reactive now. It's now becoming proactive. You're now looking at it through the lens of the observer of your world. So awakening is not becoming divine. It's awakenings are remembering the divine was never absent. It never was anywhere. You were never missing it. It was always there within you. So one of the things I want you to do just for a second is I want you to ask yourself, which archon still has authority in your life? Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it false identity? Is it approval? Is it limitation? Is it comparison? Is it separation? And this is the nature of my work, where I help people go within and look at this so that we can release it, so that we can start what? Standing in our own authority, standing in our own power. And when you do that, it changes the energies of your life, because then you start saying, I deserve to have somebody in my life that understands me on a not only a spiritually but intellectual and physical level, that respects and understands me, and I respect and understand them. And I ask for that flow of energy between all relationships in my life. Open and honest communication. And when I start to look at this within myself, when we start to learn how to lead ourselves, when we start to change the dynamics of who we are by looking at these things in ourselves, then we really get to start to change who we are. So in closing, the bridge appears the moment we stop identifying with fear and begin identifying with the divine spark within. So when we start to really look at that divine spark within us and start to train it, this is why when we start to pray, we're praying to that higher aspects of who we are. It means we're starting to connect back. We're starting to have a relationship with this part of ourselves that was always there. And sin means missing the mark. It means we're turning our back on who we are on a spiritual level. But we felt it was separate from us. We felt it was something else beyond who we are. And it never was separate from us in the first place. So there's a lot to unpack here. And I think I'll start doing these on a regular basis. I can't promise when they're going to be. They're typically supposed to be at 6 p.m. Eastern on Sundays. But it just depends on my life and how busy it is. But I do really enjoy this. And you can, like I said, check out more information about me at jeremymcdonald.net. But I really do appreciate you watching this. And if you're on my YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're on my Facebook, go ahead and follow or share this if you can. I would really appreciate that as well. Because it just helps me get the word out there and help touch other people's lives. And I just want to appreciate you, and I hope you all are having a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much. And I'm grateful to be able to be here and tell you who you are. You are an empowered being. Yeah, say it louder.